Hey, and good morning. We are live this morning talking about the choices that we make in our lives and are they super smart or could we use a little bit of help? I'm here today with Omuugn, and we are considering choices from the insights and wisdom of Omuugn. If you haven't got your copy already, now is a really good time to do it. You can pick up your copy. This is part one of a two-part series, and the two-part series is available now in a bundle. And we are meeting every single Saturday to go through the different chapters in this book that will help us become better leaders, better parents, and better people. So I'm really excited about today's conversation because I don't know, it's one of those topics where sometimes we just make dumb choices and then we look back and we wish we didn't. So please help me welcome Omuugn as we talk about how to make better choices.
Well, good morning. It's good to be here. A beautiful fall day in eastern Oregon, and hopefully
It
where you are also.
It is a beautiful fall day here in North Carolina as well. So yes, thank you. The leaves are falling and it's crisp and cold. I got my jacket on. I'm ready to go. So we're talking about choices today, and this is a topic that I think everybody needs a good refresher course on, like regularly. So tell us, if you will, what are the choices that we make, and how do they impact our lives?
Well, as I contemplated this, I realized that making choices is really kind of a profound topic. Uh, Making good choices seems like a really simple thing, and yet we've made it very, very complex. For example, take marriage. Many people make the choice to get married, and yet almost half of the marriages end in divorce. And many people get married multiple times. So, what seems to be a very logical, simple choice turns out to be a little more complex than people imagine. And there are so many things as I contemplated the society that we live in. For example, someone made the choice to put one of the most highly toxic chemicals, fluoride, in our drinking water. Now, what kind of a choice would that be? That something highly toxic could be really good for you? Or they thought it was a good idea to choose to genetically modify our food rather than eating natural organic food. Who made that choice? And why would we make the choice to believe it? Or who made the choice to put pesticides and herbicides and these highly toxic things on the food that we eat, or to kill the bugs in our garden to pollute our soil? Um, Take things like illegal immigration. We've made the choice to pass laws on immigration in our country, and yet the political leaders that we have chosen to lead us have chosen not to obey those laws but to do something else. And that doesn't make any sense to me. Or why would a person choose to take drugs when so many people are dying of taking drugs and many people's lives have been ruined taking drugs? Or what about our government itself? The last statistic that I read, only 13% of the people are satisfied with the direction that our country is going in because of the decisions made by our political leaders. That means 87%, almost 9 out of 10 people, disapprove of what our own government is choosing to do. And that doesn't make any sense. And we're surrounded by things like pro choice and pro life. What is the basis upon which we make our choice? How do we decide what is really true for the situations that we're in? Or what about all of the students who have amassed a mountain of student debt going to college. And yet many of those people don't even end up in the same major as they majored in college. They do something else with their life. And yet they will spend a majority of their life paying off these massive debts. And that doesn't seem to be maybe a wise choice. And if you were to ask everyone in the world individually whether they would choose peace and tranquility, or whether they would like to go to war and kill each other, almost everyone would choose peace and tranquility. And yet all of the nations are now converging in what could be a global war. And for some reason, we have chosen hostility and destruction over peace and tranquility, which doesn't seem to make any sense to me. And look at the diseases that we face today. Cancer is growing at an exponential rate in our population, and heart disease and diabetes and other neurological diseases, and we just keep getting worse. And with all of the advancement of science and all of the things that we've learned and all of the experiences that we've had, we should be getting healthier and we should be getting full of vitality and energy. And yet as a society, we're becoming more and more obese and sedentary. And science tells us that the fat is causing a lot of our problems. And so we've gone to low-fat yogurt and low-fat this and low-fat that, and yet people keep getting fatter and fatter. So apparently that choice was not a good one, or its implementation was not good. Science tells us that sugar is not good for us, and yet the companies that produce like soda pop and candy and all of the sugary sweet stuff, they're growing stronger and getting bigger as corporations and making more and more money, while we are getting sicker and sicker and more obese and unhealthier. And it seems like there's a breakdown in the choice that people are making somewhere. We have pretend monopoly money in our country today, fiat currency, that has no value behind it. And so we're facing, as a nation, economic collapse. We're looking at collapse in our housing industry, and the car lots are filled with cars that nobody can afford to. No, that's not incorrect. That's an incorrect statement. Many people cannot afford to buy automobiles in today's marketplace because of the high interest rates. Many people are having a hard time getting into the home buying because of the high mortgage rates. And our whole system of finances seems to be very unstable and unsure. And as we look into the future, we're perplexed. And we don't know if the stock market is going to go up or down or crash or whatever. Who's making the choices for these things? I'm sure that as a people, we would choose to make better choices. And look at pollution. For some reason, we have chosen to wrap everything in plastic and to put things in plastic bottles and to use plastics for everything. And all of a sudden, we have plastics, millions of tons of plastic ending up in our oceans and in our lakes, in our streams, and in our soils. And we're getting microplastic in everything we consume now because it is so ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And so you have to stop and think, who is making these choices? Who would choose to spray chemicals in the air we breathe, put poison in our food, poison our drinking water, cause insurmountable debt, and on and on and on and on and on? Who makes those choices? And if we elect the people who make those choices, why would we choose those people? And it just goes on and on and on. Anyway, making the right choice is much more complex than we have given it credit for. The reason that I put this section in the book, and this section in the book has more insights than any other section, because there's more wisdom and governing principles in the choices that we make that have come to us through what we call the wisdom literature. That if we would adhere to those principles, our life would be completely and totally different. We would be living a life that we really prefer to live in environments that would be more productive for us and enjoyable for us. And so we need to ask ourselves some really serious questions and get some really serious answers, which brings us to the wisdom literature. There's a genre of literature that has come down to us that gives us insight, wisdom, and knowledge and practical experience in life from prior civilizations. There are sayings and proverbs and aphorisms and teachings that would give us guidance in moral and ethical insights and philosophical reflections and how to live a good and fulfilling life. Wisdom literature often deals with fundamental questions about human existence and the nature of our reality and how to navigate life's challenges. And so what I did in the book was try to bring some of those aphorisms and sayings. An aphorism is a short saying like, "A penny saved is a penny earned." There's a lot of wisdom in that. Or well, if you want to have a friend, be a friend. Things like that. So the wisdom literature addresses the nature of suffering, the pursuit of knowledge, the importance of virtues, and the consequences of our actions. And if we don't really consider those in the choices that we make, we're going to be in the condition that we're in society today. The wisdom literature gives us moral and ethical guidance. Actually, basically all of the grounding principles that we have as a society have come from prior generations and lessons that people have learned, what works and what doesn't work. And so we need to understand those things so that we don't make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And
On
there's
page 14 of your book, you mentioned that paying attention to consequences will help us make better decisions. How are we aware of consequences when they haven't happened yet?
Well, many of the problems that I just enumerated are happening. And so there's a universal law called the law of cause and effect. And so what we're experiencing in all of these things that I just mentioned are effects. And so what we need to do is ask ourselves, what would cause each of those effects to take place? And if we don't deal with the causes, we can't change the effects. If we're trying to find solutions for effects without addressing the cause, then we're wasting our time, and problems will only get worse. For example, in the olden days when I was young, we used to store things in glass, and metal cans came into common use. But today we've switched everything to plastic, and plastic is cheaper, plastic is easier, plastic is quicker, and yet there are consequences to using plastic. If we were going to use plastic as a choice of cause, then we should also look at the effect that it would have. What are we going to do with the plastic? Well, we find out that it doesn't break down for generations in our in our landfills or in our oceans. And so if we're going to use plastic, what are we going to do with the plastic? How can we maximize it so that its effect is minimalized? Maximized in the way we use it and minimalized in its effect in our environment.
To
So,
answer that particular question, because I'm a big fan of plastics, but I'm really conscientious of the fact that it does pollute our environment. I've switched to not from single-use plastics to like reusable plastics. This is one that's BPA free and it allows me to just keep refilling my water bottle. But I like the plastic nature of it, and that if I drop it on the floor, it's not going to break. And I like it because it's lighter weight. And so I plan on using this for forever. I'm a really big fan of it. But if I'm using plastics for myself, they must be see-through plastics, because if it's painted and it has a decorative side on it, I can't tell what's inside. And so I can use and reuse the same plastic bins for years. I've used them for 10, 12 years, replacing what's inside with something else. But again, it's see-through, so I can see the contents. That way it's not going into a landfill, and I'm able to reuse that storage container. And limiting the number that I have to the things that I need, the amount that I need, but then not recycling those bins and just using them in my own home, but recycling the contents that are in them, so that the plastic bin I'm not keeping to replace the bins and buy more of them, and not have things that I can't see inside of. Because if I can't see inside of it, it's kind of useless to me. So being very conscientious of how are we using the plastics that we have, I think is a huge plus. But being very conscientious of the fact that, what is your lifestyle? So if you drop something on the floor and the glass is constantly breaking, that's also wasteful.
well,
And what's interesting, many of our recycling companies now are not taking glass anymore. They've stopped taking glass.
what science is finding is that if food comes in contact with plastic, that there's actually a transference of chemical elements that change our hormones. And if you put plastic in a microwave and cook food in plastic, there's a transference of chemical elements that change our bodies chemically, our hormones, and the way things work in our systems. And so we need to be conscientious, like you're doing, of very well. We need to scrutinize the plastic that we use, and we need to use the least amount of plastic possible. And we need to make sure that we're not cooking and freezing and doing things with plastic that will have deleterious effects to us.
Well, I don't know what the word deleterious means, but I'll tell you this. You just caught my attention because I heat up a lot of frozen food in little plastic containers. And right now, I don't think there's a person on the planet that has hormones that are more wonkadoodle than mine right now. And I'm flustered every day going, wow, my body's doing crazy, weird things. What is this? And it's very possible that you're correct, and that it's the food that I'm heating up in the microwave. So thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Well, I'll tell you how complex it is. When I was young, there were basically boys and girls. And once in a great while, there would be some mutation that would have a problem. But now we have some serious problems not only in America, but in the world, with transgender people and homosexual people and people who don't know whether they're boys or girls, or people who want to change their sexual identity, or it gets into our emotional makeup. It affects us in many, many different ways. Those are effects, and again, we need to go back. What has caused those effects? If
Well, and I
our
think not only that, but we also have a lot of issues where kids are being born today into what would be considered healthy environments, and they are sick. They are sick when they're born. And that has to have some kind of an effect from the genetics of the parent. If the parent is not eating right, or they're not taking care of themselves, or they have, I don't know, traces of whatever it is, when their child is born, we see this a lot in drug babies, where if the parent is a user, then when the baby is born as an addict. And so we're seeing lots of generational carry-ons of parents that didn't take care of themselves. And it was interesting. We had Gabriella Rosa on our show the other day talking about fertility. And I asked her the question. I said, at what point of our lives should we start paying attention to the things that we eat and the air that we breathe and the chemicals that we use so that it doesn't affect our children? And you know what she said? She said 3 generations ago.
Yeah, those changes in our genes are called methylations, and they can be passed on generation to generation to generation. In fact, we pick up a lot of our characteristics from past generational experiences that people have had. And so, yeah, we need to make choices in our lives that will produce good, healthy, well-centered offspring so that our civilizations actually improve. We're finding out that the generation that's coming up now is not going to be as healthy as the previous one. And because of our educational system, they're not, I mean, it's almost unbelievable. We have universities now that are graduating people who are basically illiterate. They cannot read. They can't understand mathematics. There are a lot of people in these protests, in these riots that are happening in the cities across America. And when those people are interviewed, why are you here? They don't really know why they're there. They don't know what the issues are. Everyone's rioting, so we're going to riot with them. Or people are holding signs, so we'll hold up signs with them. And there's a breakdown in our basic educational system. There are colleges that are actually graduating people who can't read or write. They just cannot function in society in a better way than their ancestors did.
And at the risk of convenience, we all have smartphones now where you can hit a little microphone button and you can just start talking and it will type out the words that you say so that you don't actually have to type and or spell words correctly. And what's interesting is in lieu of convenience, many of us have gotten away from actually reading or writing in that we're just talking text. And now I can play a text back and it will speak it to me so that I don't have to be literate and I don't have to read and write. So there are a lot of convenient tools that are contributing to the society that we live in, where right now, and this is pathetic, but right now, everybody on my team has spell checkers installed on their computers because many of the people that are, and I'm not pointing anybody out, but many of the people that are helping us with emails and customer service, they cannot spell. They cannot spell. And so reading something back, I'm like, really, that's the best we can do? Let's install spell checkers on everybody so it will flag and highlight in red letters like, hey, this word is misspelled. And then it gives you the automatic correction so that you can correct it. Just click on one button and it will correct your spelling. I mean, we've had to go so simple just because of the cause and effect. You're right. It's an epidemic. It's huge.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember, but when my children were small, we used to have family programs every week. And people would have to learn a part to present in this program. And one of the requirements was that you had to memorize your part. You couldn't get up and just read something. And so the idea was to use your mind, learn how to retain information, learn how to project yourself by speaking and talking, hopefully eloquently. Sometimes we're not trained to do that anymore. Like you say, we have gadgets and technologies that take away. It reminds me of when I was an engineer at a steel mill before calculators, and we used slide rules. And now if you show someone a slide rule, it's an ancient technology that very, very few people would understand. We've gone to just technology for everything, and we haven't learned to do math in our minds. We haven't learned to write correctly or use grammar correctly. They've quit teaching cursive writing in many, many schools across the nation now because people just text and use computers, and they don't really write anymore. Actually, sitting down and writing somebody a letter is an ancient technology now. So where we're headed is just, it's scary in a lot of ways, because we're so dependent on the technology that we've lost a lot of our creative skills. Two examples just right off the top. I have a son who's a professional musician, and we've had discussions about using AI to help him create his music and do what he does. And he's very opposed to that. He says, I want my music to be a reflection of my processing and what's going on inside of me. I don't want some technology outside of me doing that. I have a daughter who's a very, very talented artist. And there are artistic programs that facilitate artwork to a degree that is just, it's amazing today. And so I've asked her, what about your creative ability and using AI to do this? It's a choice that you have to make. Well, you want to use the technology because it can do so many things that can amplify what you do, but at the same time, you don't want to lose that personal input into things that identify your personality and your way of thinking and your way of feeling. You want that to remain individualistic. And we're moving, I saw in the news yesterday that there are many, many thousands and thousands of books now that are being published that are totally created by AI. And they're trying to find a way to identify those and maybe put them in a different classification. They don't want those books to just be mixed with books that people are writing from their own experience. And so it's probably going to end up being a mixture of the two. There's a certain creative possibility in using AI that can be very, very beneficial. But at the same time, we don't want AI to replace us, our individualistic talents and abilities. So
when it comes to AI, I think that it's a really polarizing topic. I've heard both sides of the argument from, and I have a cousin that just came out with a song now. It's very, very popular now on iTunes and all over, called I Say No to AI or something like that. It's called a Hollywood Superstar, I think. And she says, I'm not a Hollywood superstar and I don't want AI speaking for me. I am a human. And that's the essence of her song. It's very popular, very catchy. I high five to Summer Crookston. But her concept is one that is echoed by a lot of people in our society today, because do we or do we not go with AI? And I know that my company has embraced it with passion, because there are a lot of tools that are available to us that have never been available to us before. And AI is one of those tools. And I ask myself in every day, do I have the answer that I need right now? And if I do not have the answer, where can I go to find the answer? And I bought a piece of software 2 days ago, and it was completely foreign to me. And I said, technology is coming at me so fast. I don't have 3 or 4 weeks for a learning curve. I need to learn this in a couple of hours. What is the quickest, fastest way for me to learn how to implement this new software on my websites? So I jumped in, and they have a help desk that has a bunch of documentation they have provided for me. So I jumped into that first. Then I said, I'm not seeing that on my screen. So then I jumped in and I asked AI. I said, okay, here is what I'm doing. I just bought this new piece of software. This is the goal of the software. This is what I'm trying to replace it with, trying to clue AI into something it might be familiar with. And I said, now I'm trying to do this, and it's asking me for this, and I don't know how to do this. And it said, oh, do this, 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 and this. And I typed it in, and like presto, there it was. I got snagged on one thing, and AI came back to me and said, I don't know the answer to that either. Now you're going to have to go back and ask the manufacturer, because this is something new before my time. And I was like, awesome. Instead of me bugging the help team during a launch, I was able to get through about 97% of what I needed. And then I jumped in at the last minute and I asked the help team, and they were that quick to resolve it. because it was a quick, simple answer. And I knew exactly the terminology and the question I was trying to ask when, I hate to say this, like 15 minutes before, I didn't know any of the questions I was supposed to ask. I didn't know what the terminology was or anything. So then when I asked a question, it was like, specifically, here's the answer. And they were like, specifically, here you go. I was like, boom, solved, fixed, website up and running. Thank you, AI. Thank you, technology, you know? So I love it. I love it for what it allows us to do. But like you said, it does matter if you are not clear on what your outcome is. I think you have to be clear first.
It's kind of interesting that when I was young and I wanted to know something, I would ask someone, and many times they didn't know the answer, and so I would go to the library, and I would have to go through all of these library cards looking for a book that might have the answer for the question that I had. And then it moved from that to if you were more of a well-to-do family, you could purchase a set of encyclopedias, which was a real luxury. And then if you had a question, you could just go to the encyclopedias and research your question. And then it went to computers. And you could ask the search engine a question. And the search engine would come back and give you all different kinds of websites that you could go to maybe find the answer to the question that you were looking for. Yesterday we were canning plums, and we didn't know whether the timing in the water bath was the same for a quart or a pint. And so I got on AI and I said, I'm putting up plums in a steam bath. I live in the Northwest and I'm at 2,700 feet elevation, and it's fall. And so the temperature is in the mid 60s, and I'm canning plums, and I want to know how long to leave them in the water bath, a quart versus a pint jar. And in a fraction of a second, it came back and gave me all of the information and said the quart jar is going to be 25 minutes at your elevation and your temperature, where a pint will be 25 minutes. And the answer was just there instantly. And so now if you have a question about almost anything, using a search engine is obsolete. I mean, AI is so much quicker, so much more available, and the answer is just instantaneous for almost any question that you have. In fact, if you don't know how to use AI, you can ask AI how to use it, and it will tell you how to use it. I mean, it will answer anything you want to ask it.
Well, you know, speaking of choices, when I moved away from home and I started my first business, I discovered that with my public library card, I could ask 20 questions a day. So every day on my way to work, I was cleaning houses, I would drop off my 20 questions. And then at the end of the day, I would drop back by the public library and they would have 20 answers for me. And it would be like different microfiche programs I could pull up, or they would have gone through that library card index and they would have pulled up resources or periodicals or magazines or whatever I could have the answers for. And I was trying to learn to grow my business, but didn't have the technology. And so that was my 20 questions a day. And because it was a free resource, I utilized it to its maximum capacity. Then when the computers became a home thing, like where it was possible someone could own a computer, they were very expensive. But I went ahead and I got one because I said, wait a second, if this is true and I can ask a question to the computer and it can answer me back, that saves me from going to the library every day. So that was a choice that I made that was going to save me some time and a whole bunch of other people's energy. And there was this program called Ask Jeeves, and Jeeves was like the Google. And so I went and I asked Jeeves every day. I would ask all my questions now to Jeeves. And like you said, Jeeves would come back with a series of websites. And I would sort through them as fast as I could to find the answers I was looking for. And then lo and behold, we evolved to Google. And oh, I love Google because Google would give me a bunch of websites, but it was also more specific. Did you mean this, 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 this? And it would start making suggestions. And I was like, wow, this is even better, because sometimes I don't know exactly what I'm looking for. When I started making my YouTube channel, I had a shaky camera. Like I was walking when I was filming and the camera was shaking. And I was trying to fix in post-production, how do you fix a shaky camera? No such thing. But Google came up and said, do you mean warped image stabilization? I'm like, what is that? When I clicked on it, lo and behold, that's shaky camera. That's the fancy term for shaky camera. So I started learning by the questions that I asked. And what's interesting, like you said, with AI now, instead of just going to Google, we now have better tools. And so I think when you talk about choices, I think it goes back to common sense. What common sense do you have that you can implement into the tools that are available to us? That not as a musician do you have to annihilate your identity or your personality by using tools. But maybe as a musician, that musician could then create the music they want to create, but use AI to help them with their marketing and with their promotion and with their visibility in the marketplace. Maybe there are different avenues where you could slightly adjust, but then make a better splash with the tools that are already available to us.
Yeah, one of the dangers that I've found with AI is that it's biased. And if you could create an AI program that was completely and totally objective, it would be interesting to reform our government so that all of the issues that face people could be put into AI questions in an unbiased way, and have AI give us the ideal answer instead of all of these politicians who are influenced by lobby groups and big corporations and all different kinds of factors. If you could just take an issue and let AI choose the best solution for the issue, it seems like it would be a vast improvement in our government. But before we get too carried away with AI, because we could talk about AI all day.
Yeah, we just jumped off in the deep end there, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. I would like to cover a couple of other ideas concerning choices. And that is, a lot of times, circumstances that we're in dictate the choices that we make. We're either reactive or proactive. And we need to be very careful that we're not just reactive, because we all have biases and we've been raised in a certain culture, and we have a way of looking at things and even a way of thinking about things that may not be completely accurate. And so we don't want circumstances to dictate to us who we are and what we do. We want to use circumstances as learning experiences and opportunities for growth and personal development. Every circumstance, you can react to it, or you can say, I want to learn from this and I want to become a better person because of this. And we can use the circumstance to our benefit. Even there are bad circumstances. For example, you can put yourself in a situation, or you could be in a situation where you really have very limited choices. For example, if you chose a life of crime, you could be incarcerated. And if you're incarcerated, your choices are very, very limited. And there are people who have physical handicaps. There are people who are in environments like a child is in the environment of his home, its home, her home. I don't know what is correct in today's society.
The child's home.
In the child's home. A child doesn't have the capacity to determine many of the decisions that are made in that home. That's up to the parent. And so if you're in a situation or a circumstance like that, sometimes the only choice that you have is to change the way you look at things. You can change your attitude. You can choose to react differently. You can choose what you would prefer. For example, I know a fellow who grew up in a home where there was abusive language and tobacco and alcohol and a lot of things that, from the child's perspective, they didn't want that to continue in their life. And so they made the choice as a child to have a different life that they would prefer. They wanted more beautiful language used, more expressive language than guttural remarks. And they wanted more use of their facilities than to be on addictive substances. And so we can make choices that have profound impact in our life. We don't want circumstances or the condition that we're in to dictate those to us. We want to be in control of our life and our choices. So again, we go back to the universal law of cause and effect. We need to start dealing more with causes so that we have the effects that we choose to have.
If I hear you correctly, what I'm hearing you say is when you are aware, you have choices. And like the guy that had the family, he was aware that there was a situation he didn't want to repeat in his own life. And it's interesting when you're not aware how you continue to do what you always know. And when you are aware, you do have choices. I know right now I'm going through something on a personal level where I was unaware. I was unaware that intermittent fasting could actually be really advantageous to my health. I was unaware. I did not know. I'd heard about it, but I didn't know enough about it to know that it would make a difference. And what I knew, this is not making me smart. It's just, this is what I know. If I don't eat every few hours, then my blood sugar levels dip and then I get all cranky. That's what I knew. So making it intermittent fasting didn't make a lot of sense for me because in the back of my head, I don't want to go get cranky because my blood sugar levels are going to dip. I didn't know that there are actually two sources of energy in the body. And when your body expires of all of the carbohydrates that has created the energy, you switch over into a ketosis state that then creates a new level of energy at a much higher level than the sugar version that your body created with carbohydrates. I didn't know that. And all of a sudden, once I learned that, now I have choices. I'm now aware that I have a choice. Okay, wait a second. Can you just show me a better way to live? Let me give that a try. And I've been trying it every day for 2 weeks. And I've lost 15 pounds and my energy has been through the roof. Well, for a woman going through menopause, let me tell you what, that was like flipping on a light switch. I was unaware. I didn't know I had a choice. And then I start saying, well, wait a second, because like an old part of me is like every time I walk through the kitchen, I want to open the fridge and hope new snacks have appeared. Okay, that's the old me. And now I walk through the kitchen saying, don't look inside. No new snacks have appeared, I promise. And there's nothing in there you need to eat right now. Really focus on staying hydrated and focus on letting your body do what it was actually designed to do, which is produce this natural energy through ketosis. I didn't know I had a choice. So I think it's really important what you're saying about when you're aware you have choices, because some of the awareness, and it's that being mindful that you're talking about and looking at the cause and effect. If I have a better way of living, why wouldn't I make the choice to do that? And after 2 weeks, I'm like knocking myself upside the head, like, why didn't I do this before? I'm in the 50s. I'm feeling like I'm in the 20s again. But for the last 30 years, I felt like I was in the 50s.
Awareness is amazing. And it's really the reason that I wrote the books, because a lot of times we're unaware of the of our own characteristics, and we don't realize what they are and what we should be doing with each characteristic. And so awareness, like you say, you can't do something if you're not aware of it. And going back to AI, AI helps us ask questions on this very thing. We can ask AI about our health and what would be the ideal diet and what foods are most nutritious. And if we use AI to give us the best answers for the best questions that we can come up with, it can be very, very enlightening, because a lot of things that we don't think about, we know what the end result we want is. We want to live in peace and harmony and tranquility as healthy, happy, balanced individuals. But we need all of the information to do that. And that takes us back to the wisdom literature. If everyone were to make a list of their wisdom literature, the list would probably be different. So I'm not proposing a particular list of wisdom literature, but I'll share some of mine with you, because the wisdom literature contains the ideas that I think even AI would give us to have a more profound life, a more successful life, a more dynamic life. Um, there's a collection of what we call the scriptures, such as the Christian Bible or the Quran. Um, there's ancient Egyptian literature, such as the instructions of Taopep or the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. There's Mesopotamian literature, such as the Sumerian and Akkadian proverbs. There's the Greek philosophy of teachers like Aristotle and Plato and Socrates that actually pursued a lot of the philosophy behind life situations and the moral and ethical elements of society. And there are the Asian traditions, the Tao Te Ching and the Art of War of Lao Tzu, and there are the Upanishads and Vedas of India, and there's a lot of literature like the Book of Enoch and the Apocalypse of Isaiah and the scriptural pseudepigraphical things that are not included in the Bible, but were in the same time era as the Bible. A lot of very, very intelligent people giving us insights. There are books like Owaspe and things that we're not really familiar with, but we could ask AI what some of the rich sources of information would be, and it would tune us into what some of the wisdom literature really is, because AI knows a lot of those answers and they can guide us into many of those things. But that takes us to the universal laws and foundational principles, which is the crux of making good choices. If the choices that we make are based on universal laws and foundational principles, our choices are going to be better. And our choices are not going to be as biased. They're not going to be as maybe cultural. In fact, a lot of elements in a culture, for example, if you're in a cannibalistic tribe, your culture would be very different than if you're in a modern society like we're in. Eating people is not acceptable to us. And so if you associate yourself with wisdom ideas, with foundational principles, with universal laws, it solves a lot of your problems. Because a lot of decisions that are being made by countries are being made by people who are motivated by greed and the lust for power, and for things that are not based on universal laws or principles. They're based on the frailties of humanity. And so we want to shift as much as possible our decision-making processes into eternal, reliable things that produce the outcomes that we want. Analyzing causes that will produce the effects that we want. Changing our environment to things that we don't prefer to things that we prefer, things that are more enjoyable, that are more pleasing. We should just make better choices, and we wouldn't have all of these health problems. Like if you knew about intermittent fasting, you would make better choices. Or if you're going to eat carbohydrates, you would know that if you refrigerate or freeze them for 24 hours, 60% of the carbohydrate is changed to a fiber. So you don't have the sugar problems. And if you need more energy, if you're lacking in vitamin B1, your carbohydrates will not process optimally. And so learning about minerals and vitamins and how things interact and enzymes and whatever, all of that information is at our fingertips today. Any question that you want to ask is just readily available. And so making good choices is so much easier today than it has been previously. It's almost mind-boggling to imagine the problems that we face as a society because of the poor choices that are being made.
Well, speaking of nutrition and having choices, one of the choices that I have made is to get away from sauces. There are a lot of preservatives in sauces, ketchups and salad dressings and things like that. And so the other day I was trying to make a salad and I decided that I wanted some salad dressing, but I said, what if I were to make some healthy salad dressing? So I went to ChatGPT and I said, hey, I'm trying to make some Japanese ginger dressing, but I want to make it without the sugar. How can I replace whatever is in there to make it so that it doesn't have sugar? And the answer came back, you can blend carrots with it because carrots are naturally sweet and that will give you the taste and it will give you the orange color and it will also make your ginger dressing taste, delicious. So I made it with the blended up carrots and it was so good. And I was like, oh, wow, I just made this with no sugar. How cool is that? And now it gave me a warning. It said this is only going to last for about 4 days because there are no preservatives in it. So you have to eat it right away. And I was like, that's okay. But I was so delighted because you talk about, again, being aware and then asking different questions and then having different choices. And so to make the best of the choices available to me. And I never made ginger dressing before in my entire life. This was brand new to me. But then I was like really proud of myself because I was like, look what me and Chat GPT made. So now I'm going through my pantry. I'm like, look, I found some quinoa. How do I make a healthy meal out of this? With no preservatives. That's going to, be delicious and gluten-free. It's awesome.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, there is so much information on how to make, for example, your own condiments. If you go to AI, I guess, and ask it the question, what are the worst foods that you can eat? The condiments are included in there every time.
Yeah.
The condiments are full of sodium and sugar and artificial sweeteners and all kinds of things. But you also have the availability of all of the recipes for eating organically and creating your own. Like last year, we made our own ketchup because ketchup is on the list of one of the worst things that you can eat because of all of the colorings and sugars and all the high fructose corn syrups and all kinds of things in it. You can actually make a very zesty, tasteful ketchup that's healthy. And you can create your own salad dressings instead of all of the artificial colorings and sweet and all of those things. You can actually use olive oils and vinaigrettes and things that are very, very healthy for your body. And they're very simple to make, simple recipes. So with just a little bit of effort, we can ask better questions and get better answers and choose a different lifestyle. A lifestyle where we're learning new skills and abilities. We learn how to cook. We learn how to make condiments. We're gathering knowledge all of the time. We're becoming better people. If we just go to the grocery store and just buy everything prepared, frozen meals and ketchups and salad dressings, we're going to be unhealthy because of all of the chemicals that we don't want to put into our bodies. And so we can make better choices in everything that we do.
I love that. I love the fact that not only are we do we have AI and we have different technology available to us so that we can make better choices. But I love the fact that we are at a place right now where we have our freedom and our free agency to do just that. I realized I woke up one day, and this is just a couple months ago. I really stressed out as a business owner, really, really stressed out. So I went on vacation. When I came back from vacation, I was so stressed out when I got back from vacation, I needed another vacation. I kid you not. 2 weeks, 2 weeks back to work, and I was completely in burnout mode again. So I went on yet another vacation. I kid you not. I flew all the way across the country. I went over to England a second time in 3 weeks. 2 weeks later, I was back again for another vacation. And I came back completely burned out. I'm like, whatever I'm doing is not working. And I realized in this moment, I do have a choice. There's only one person in the world that gets to determine how I feel and how I live my life, and it's me. I'm responsible for getting up every day and for the systems that I put into place for how I live my life. And if whatever this is I'm doing is not working, I get to change. I get to change. I'm the one that gets to make put on my big girl pants, make this change. I'm the one that gets to make this happen. And I remember thinking to myself, and I hate to admit this, but As a business owner, I have a whole team of people that rely on me every single day. And they expect me to show up and be their cheerleader and inspire them and encourage them when they're not at their best. And that is a huge amount of pressure. And I woke up thinking to myself, I chose this. I put myself in this situation. No one is making me do this. No one at my company is holding me hostage, making me show up every day. I'm doing this to myself. And I realize if I'm moving forward and this is not working for me, I have nothing to lose except making radically different changes. If I make radically different changes, I can have radically different results. And so as I'm going through this process of the intermittent fasting, and I joined a gym and I started working out like all impact workouts every single day. And I started going to bed earlier at night, even though maybe I'm not done with my work for the day. And I started making radically different changes. And lo and behold, newsflash, radically different results. And I'm like, why didn't I do this sooner? Because like on a scale of 1 to 10, if 10 was I feel fantastic and things are in the flow and they're working for me, like out of the last 2 weeks, I've been like a 9 or a 10 every single day. Well, that is not at all like what the last several months have been. So I sit here going, oh my goodness, I have a choice. And yeah, it's not comfortable to not eat all day. It's not comfortable, but is it worth the price? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know that we're getting short on time, but I would sort of like to leave this idea with everyone today. We need to be responsible for the choices that we make. And we need to look at all of the areas of our lives. The foods that we eat, our health in general, our exercising, our sleep patterns, how we deal with stress, the associations that we have with people, our relationships with family and loved ones. Every aspect of our lives need to be choices that we make. And we need to make those choices based on universal laws and foundational principles. We need to use wisdom literature and be familiar with those principles so that we can incorporate those into the decisions that we make. We have to hold ourselves accountable. We need to actually develop systems where we evaluate ourselves periodically. And like if you decide to do intermittent fasting every week or so, go back and review that process. How is this process working for you? If it's not the ultimate thing, maybe you find out that every month you need to fast for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days, and it is even better and more beneficial than to do intermittent fasting all of the time. We're always learning new things, and science is progressing, and we're looking more and more into the microscopic world of cellular structures and how enzymes work. The liver has over 450 different functions to perform. And we need to live so that we maximize all of those. We don't want to cripple our own liver and impede what it does. And every organ, every gland in our body can be maximized in a certain way. It needs certain minerals, certain nutrients. And so we can start eating differently. Sometimes we have to learn to like something that we don't like to eat. Maybe we like sweets, but sweets aren't good for us. We need to restructure our lives so that our lives are really what the effect is that we're trying to achieve. And we need to work on the causes of those effects and make the very, very best choices in everything that we do. And
I think if we did that, I think you would look back on your life with no regrets. I think you'd say, I made the best choices available to me in every moment, knowing then what I knew then. And as my information improved, I made better choices. And I think if we took that challenge, and I love that you gave that challenge to us today, if we took that challenge moving forward, making the best decision in every moment that is to the highest knowledge of who we are today, that's going to make us the best version of ourselves.
well, one last short statement. I'll leave you with this today. Life is a progression of choices. That's what life is. Let's make the best choices that we can.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you guys for joining us today. And those of you that are watching on the replay, this is also a podcast as well as a YouTube channel. If you're not familiar, listen to it on your favorite podcast app. You can also leave comments in the notes below and we will respond to those just as soon as we can. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Omuugn, for your time today. And if you have not already, please get your copy of the Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn. It is available now on your online retailers. And we will meet again here, same time, same place.